LeetCode is one of the most essential tools that anyone can use to prepare for their technical interviews nowadays. As they say, a LeetCode a day keeps the unemployment away.
Leet coding. No time for showers, no time for breakfast.
So I personally used LeetCode during my junior year to prepare for my technical interviews, and that's how I landed my internship at Meta. Now, I made a video on this before comparing Algo Expert and LeetCode, so you can check that out and I'll leave a link in the description below as well. This is going to be all about how you can use LeetCode effectively. Before I go into the points, if you like similar content to this, then stay tuned to the channel. You can do that by subscribing. It keeps me really motivated. Please subscribe. So the tips that I'm going to mention in this video will all differ a little by how much time you have left for your upcoming interviews. As I'm mentioning all the points, I'll also differentiate what you can do differently if you have an interview that's maybe coming up very quickly. So the first point, which is an important point, is the order of the questions that you want to attempt. It also depends on how much time you have left. So if you have more than 2 weeks left to your interview, I want you to attempt the questions going from an easy to harder difficulty patterns. So I want you to do easy questions first, then do mediums, and then maybe do hard questions. And why I am saying that is because a lot of the fundamentals that are contained within the easy questions are used to build up questions that are going to be in the medium and harder questions. Let's say that you don't know how to do easy questions and you don't know the patterns to that easy question, you won't be able to solve the medium question anyways.
This is big brain time.
Make sure you do 30 to 40 easy questions before moving on to medium questions. It will really allow you to gain comfortability. And also, harder questions usually don't appear within the interview because it's a 45-minute interview, and hard questions are rarely and very hard to solve during that 45-minute time frame. One thing that I would suggest is that there are some hard questions that are beneficial for you to do. There's a list called Blind 75. You can check some of the hard questions that are within it. You can also filter to see some of the top 100 questions and do some of the hard questions that are within those lists. I just want you to focus on building that comfortability, which is going to be important as you go along and solve harder and harder questions. If you have less than 2 weeks left, then you don't need to focus on the difficulty of the questions. Then what you need to do is that you need to identify what topics you're weak in. So you need to identify that, oh, maybe I'm weak in dynamic programming. Then you need to do more dynamic programming questions. And how I want you to get comfortable in a topic that you're weak in is following a very similar approach where you do easier questions first, you get used to the pattern within the easier questions, and then you build it up to do the medium and maybe the harder questions. This advice doesn't mean at all that you ignore the topics that you're comfortable in, because believe me, if you think you're comfortable in something and you get too comfortable, it might just end up coming back to you and surprising you within the interview.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Also, if you have less than 2 weeks left, I would like you to focus more on the questions that are also specific to the company. Now, LeetCode allows you to filter by company specific questions, and I think that this is a great feature that you can use to target those questions that are asked by the company, because let me tell you this, a lot of the companies actually tend to repeat their questions. Now, as a bonus point, I would like to mention that, some people also like to maybe focus on data structures. So they would start off by doing easier data structures such as arrays and then move on to harder data structures, maybe like tries or something. So that is something that maybe you can decide upon which strategy you like best. I personally would prefer going from easier questions to medium and then hard. So the second point, which is really important, is how much time you want to allot to questions. If you have more than 2 weeks left to the interview, then I would suggest you to not rush the questions. Spend more than an hour, 1 to 2 hours on the question. Really struggle through the question, because that's how you build an identification for patterns. If you're gonna go through a question, spend 10 minutes at it, and you're not really seeing what the question is about, and you instantly see the solution, and you think, oh yeah, maybe given 5 minutes, I would have come up with the same solution. It's not the same thing. You're not gonna learn anything. It's very important that you spend time on questions, that you give yourself the time to learn, because that is going to allow you to move and grasp the concepts and get comfortable. Another great feature in LeetCode is that you have some hints for each question, and you can use that. Let's say that if you're not able to come up with a solution in 45 minutes, use some hints. Try to see if you can come up to the solution by reading some of those hints. If you still can't come up to the solution after having struggled, try to read through the editorial section. Try to go through, whether I can come up to the solution by reading through some of the explanation. I don't suggest you to copy paste the solution and just read it. Try going through the explanation and now try coding it, because this will reinforce your concepts of whether you actually actually understood what was written in the editorial section. And if that even doesn't help you, then the end goal is that, oh, if you can't even make it there, then just copy paste the code, go through it. I would say debug it, kind of. Do some reverse engineering on the code. That really personally helped me. I would print out some log statements to see variables and how they're going. And that would actually allow me to see how things flow within this code. Now, if you have less than 2 weeks left, then what I want you to do differently is to time yourself. Now, timing yourself is very important because let's say in a real interview, you'll be given 45 minutes. Try to solve that question within those 45 minutes. Try to use the least amount of hints as possible. But if you can't get there in 45 minutes, then do use the hints, because in a real interview, you will be given some hints by the interviewer. Another thing that was very helpful to me and that allowed me to think about edge cases was that once you're done writing your code and you run the code against the test cases, if it fails, don't see what test case is failing. Try to think about it yourself. Try to see what edge case is going to make my code fail, because this will actively help you to think about edge cases within your code. It will actively help you in a real interview, because in a real interview, the interviewer is really looking out for you, looking out for edge cases. And that is an important skill to have. And of course, if you're not able to do the question, do reflect back on what you did wrong, how you could have done things differently, because it will allow you to learn and evolve. There's another newly added section in LeetCode, which is like similar questions. And let's say that if you struggle through the question and you really had a hard time with it, you can look at some similar questions and try to attempt those to see that, oh, whether you really learned the concepts that you were struggling with. Another point is that instead of focusing on the quantity of the questions, you should focus on the quality of the question. And how can you do that? You can sort the questions by the most light questions. You can do questions from a chosen list such as blind 75, and there are many other lists that people have also created. You can look through that in the discussion section as well. Another way to do that is by looking at the like and dislike ratio of the question. I don't want you to do questions that have a very high dislike ratio, because some of those questions are very vague and they're not very testing of data structures as well. So you don't want to waste your time on those type of questions. Another way to do it is that you'd spend ample time on problems and really struggle through them, as I've mentioned that before. And by struggling through the question, you'll really be able to grab the pattern that it represents. Once you're really done with the question, another really great feature about LeetCode is the community that they have. And the discussion section is really helpful of, discussing the question, what were some pros and cons of the question, what could have been done differently, maybe the wording. And these discussions really help you to understand more, because people provide their insights. And you also have a solution section, which I believe is great, because people have posted their own solutions with explanations and you can go and read through them. You can also sort them and filter by upvoted solutions in the solution section, and that can really help you to also get an explanation if you're not able to understand otherwise. Now, another point is to never skip the space and time complexity analysis. And trust me, this is very easy to do, because once you're solving the question, once you're done with the question, you really tend to move on to the next question and to the next question. But you want to focus on deciphering the space and time complexity analysis, because in a real interview, this can really make or break your interview. Another point, and this is very important, is that a lot of people, when they start off new to LeetCode and in general like problem solving, right, they tend to find it very hard. And I know that you need a basic understanding of programming and data structures if you are to jump into this realm. But let's say you have that and you're struggling with easy questions. Sometimes a tendency can be that, when you're struggling with questions, you question yourself of whether you are weak in data structures. And I have personally done that myself a lot. A tendency for me was that I would go back and I would revise data structures. I would watch videos on MIT or whatever, right? And I would think that watching those videos will help me solve questions. It really doesn't. LeetCode will, in general, at the beginning, it will make you struggle for the first month. Even doing easy questions is going to be hard. But as you go along, as you get comfortable with the questions, trust me, you will gain comfortability, because it's all a pattern game. It's all about doing as many questions, as many quality questions, and understanding the patterns. When you understand the pattern, you'll be able to identify the pattern and solve the question. It's about practice and consistency, and not about jumping in between. It's not really your data structures that are really weak. It's just you not being able to identify the pattern or the data structure that's going to be used in the question. And that's a skill that's going to take time to build. Personally, it took me over a month to just get comfortable with the easy questions. So yeah, that's about it from my side. Hope you liked the points in the video. If you enjoyed, please like this video, as that helps my channel a lot. It helps, the YouTube algorithm to identify, to push this content more. I would love you to do that. And yeah, see you guys in the next video.